Kids, just like adults, tend to communicate in 4 different communication styles: passive, assertive, aggressive, and passive aggressive. So let's look at each one real quick to see what we're talking about. Hi, I'm Diana Cortez. I'm a BCBA and former special education teacher, and I help teachers, parents, and behaviorists teach social skills to kids in fun, practical, evidence-informed ways. First, let's start with passive. Here are some of the characteristics. It doesn't mean you have to have all of these in passive communication. Generally, if you are communicating passively, it means you are speaking softly or in a low voice, avoiding being heard. You're avoiding confrontations. You perhaps seek a lot of approval from others, or you're doing things just to please others. Looking down is a big hallmark of being very passive, or possibly over apologizing. Now, in contrast to being passive would be aggressive. So aggressive communication looks like communication where you're trying to dominate situations. Your language could be hurtful or maybe just overly loud, the volume. Accusatory, when you're always like looking for blaming people. Obviously, using physical force would be aggressive communication, or just trying to verbally intimidate. A lack of self-control and making a lot of demands of others are all characteristics of being aggressive. So what is passive aggressive communication? This, when you teach it to kids, is a little trickier. It's a little bit more abstract because it really has to deal with sarcasm and sort of a hidden communication method, a communication method in disguise, right? So passive aggressive means to make sarcastic comments or be vague or use indirect language, giving a backhanded compliment, saying one thing, meaning another. Maybe you agree to do something, but then you do it wrong on purpose, pretending not to understand or not to see somebody, or maybe purposely taking like an overly long time to do something. So this is, like I said, a tricky communication method, and I usually reserve this for my upper grades in elementary, like maybe 5th grade, but definitely middle school and definitely high school because it's very common. Finally, we have assertive communication, and this is obviously what we want. Assertive communication enables someone to express what they need, how they feel clearly, while still being kind and respectful to others, which can be tricky if you're feeling a lot of emotions or you have a lot of emotional dysregulation in general. But assertive communication is when we express thoughts and feelings clearly. We can set boundaries, be direct, use an I statement, so we're only talking for ourselves, self-advocating, okay, what you need and how you feel, remaining calm, and addressing the problem, not trying to do it the backhanded way as the passive aggressive, not trying to do it via intimidation, which is the aggressive, and not trying to just hope and wish it happens when you're very passive. So how do we teach kids to be assertive communicators? Really, the most effective way to teach kids to take action is to help them know how to do it when they're feeling the same way they'd be feeling when it happens in real life. So role playing is huge with this. Why are role plays so important? Well, when you role play, even though the kids or adults know that it's a fake situation, obviously they know this is not really happening, you still feel many of the same feelings as if it's really happening. So if you have a role play with somebody, another child, and they're saying something maybe close to you or in a loud volume or in a rude way, if it really does give you that sensation, okay? It gives you that sensation. Why? Because the person is physically close to you and your body is going to react that way. So if I can tell you, hey, do this, and the student is seated there, but if I'm yelling at you, like, get out of my way, and I'm right there and I'm yelling at you, or I'm really up in your face, or I'm saying something, snooty to you or mean, you are going to feel that much more rather than when you're seated, right? So this way, if the kids can practice their assertive skills while sort of in the moment. The best in the moment they're going to get, that's not actually in the moment. So what does assertive communication look like in terms of, what does it look like? What are the words we're going to actually say? When you give your role plays, think of common scenarios in which kids would have to stand up for themselves and be assertive. So in school, it might be like being cut in line, someone hitting you, or maybe something's happening and you want to get in on it, like, hey, can I have a turn with that? Or can I join you? You're saying how you feel. You can also just be direct. Please stop. I don't like it when, okay? You're just saying something without intimidation, without a loud voice volume, keeping personal space, and without over inflection in certain words, and just being very clear and calm and direct. But when you say that in the context of a role play, you want to practice it and practice because it's not as easy as it sounds. So you practice that with your students or with your child, and then what I would do is after the role play, you get some feedback. How did you feel? How was it standing up for yourself? Did you feel weird? Do you think, you could do this in other situations? What are some other ways you could have said that? So there's lots to discuss after you do the role play. When I do role plays in my groups, I'll have some kids role play, some kids be the audience. We do like an action and cut, and then the audience will say what they saw and interpreted, and the role players will also discuss what they, how they felt and how they were trying to come across. Another way to teach assertive communication skills is for them to practice looking at and thinking about different phrases and try to distinguish which one is passive, which one is aggressive, which one is passive aggressive. So for example, I've made a game out of it, a bingo game out of this, and the calling cards are actually the phrases, and the bingo board would have the communication styles. So for example, a calling card could be, I don't need to be the leader, we'll just do what you say. Is that a passive response? Is that an assertive response? So they would have to think about that and mark it off on their bingo board. Another calling card could be, please stop, it's not funny. Is that assertive? Is that passive? It's for them to mark off and for you guys to talk about, not for you to always be telling them the answer. It's for them to think about it and come to the conclusion themselves via them explaining why they think what they think. That's really important. And whenever you're teaching anything, it's not, hey, memorize this. It's, let's talk about it. Let's hear your thoughts, because they need to internalize how they feel. Otherwise, they're memorizing. And if they memorize it, they might forget it. And if the exact situation doesn't happen, then the memory is going to do no good. It has to be something they actually embody and they feel is right because they know it through practice and through their own thinking skills. Okay? So another way to teach assertive communication styles is to give the kids a lot of relatable scenarios that could happen to them. For example, you're at a sleepover and you want to go home, or you overhear a group of friends making plans without you. Scenarios up on a board or on a wall and have those scenarios there. Then you can have different responses in different communication styles, and the kids could have to categorize which response would be aggressive, which would be passive, passive aggressive, etc. Okay, this one you still want to incorporate movement because that's always key when you're working with kids. But instead of acting it out in an assertive way, in the appropriate way, this way you're thinking about, okay, this response would be this way, this response would be the ideal way. Again, it's more for discussion, and this one would be for slightly older kids who don't need as much like gamification of things. So those are some ways you can teach assertive communication skills and also how to distinguish between the 4 communication styles. If this is something you're interested in or you want more information about, let me know by liking the video or subscribing to my channel. I make a lot of resources and games for kids to teach social skills, primarily in the group format. And I would love to share with you more and more resources and teaching strategies that I have.